there's all this anti-Trump hysteria out there, and I wanted to talk about another paper, not your own Wall Street Journal, but rather the New York Times, and I was amazed to see this headline published by two former National Security Council staffers. It was entitled, "We used to think the military would stand up to Trump. We were wrong." Now, Gerard, I mean, it feels a little bit like they're saying the quiet part out loud here. Like, between the lines, there's almost a sense that they would wish for that the military would not only refuse Trump's orders when it comes to doing things like police crime in D.C. or Los Angeles, but also maybe go even further. There's an idea here, a sense that in this sort of class of thinkers, that only if they win is it actually democracy, and otherwise, well, all bets are off.
Yeah, correct, James. I mean, look, in a democracy, the military is answerable and only answerable to the civilian authorities. The commander-in-chief of the United States is President Donald Trump, as it was President Joe Biden. He alone is the commander of the American military forces. And the idea that, now, of course, the military, senior experienced military leaders are free to offer advice to the president. They're free to say, "Mr. President, I don't think that's a good military strategy." And he's free to say, "Sorry, guys, I'm doing it." In the end, the authority rests with him. And exactly, you're right, James. For the New York Times or for others to say, why isn't the military standing up to Donald Trump? I mean, this is exactly the inversion of what you're supposed to be believing in when you talk about democracy and democracy being in peril. Democracy really would be in peril if we had an elected president who believed it was right to deploy the National Guard in certain circumstances, to pursue particular military courses of action. And listening to the New York Times, senior military leaders stood up and said, "Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to defy the president. He's not going to get away with it." That would be the end of democracy. You would have essentially an out-of-control military. So, of course, the military is under civilian control. And, of course, it's absurd to think that the military should somehow be defying the President Trump, in what he's trying to do.
Gerard, I just want to ask you one final question here before I let you go. Just quickly, you've had a great piece in the Journal also about this guy, Zohran Mamdani, and we're following him closely here. You say that he could be reflective of a new tilt leftward in the Democratic Party because all of the economic dislocation around AI is going to mean all of the sorts of college-educated knowledge workers that he represents are going to start demanding more and more from the government to maintain their lifestyle and their prestige. Just tell us quickly about how that's going in New York.
Yeah, James, you know the old familiar story. People tend to be left-wing when they're young. They have, busts of Karl Marx in their student rooms, and they wear Che Guevara T-shirts. And, as they grow a little older, wiser, more intelligent, they accumulate responsibilities, and more importantly, perhaps most importantly of all, they start to have to pay taxes. They move steadily to the right. Margaret Thatcher famously used to say, the facts of life are conservative, and when people discover the facts of life, they typically move in that direction. So what I was pointing out in the column was that this guy, Zohran Mamdani, the socialist, self-described socialist, Democratic candidate now for mayor of New York City, very much the favorite to win. In the primary vote a couple of months ago, in the Democratic primary, he won the vote of a lot of younger voters. Now, they are very disillusioned with, the way things are in New York City. I live in New York City. It's a very expensive place, like major cities around the world. It's becoming increasingly difficult for people to afford the cost of living that New York represents. And I think what's really interesting, James, about my point about artificial intelligence and the way in which that's changing the workforce is those younger people may actually have an economic reason, as well as believing all the sort of tripe that they get when taught at university about decolonization and how evil the West is and how evil capitalism is. They actually, may no longer have a kind of a guaranteed future of economic success, which would typically move to the right, because AI is replacing the jobs. We've had some very interesting reports in the last couple of weeks, which have shown that the jobs that are most at risk and are already being replaced by artificial intelligence are many of those jobs that young graduates do: financial analysis, public relations, entry-level law work, that kind of stuff. So that's, I think we haven't really begun to explore yet the full political implications of AI, the way it changes the labor force, the way it's going to change people's expectations, and indeed the ability to realize their expectations about their economic performance.
Fascinating stuff, Gerard. We're going to have to leave it there, but I will tell you, I did not myself ever have a bust of Karl Marx up in my dorm room. Maybe a picture on the dartboard.
Nor did I, but some very famous people did.
I know. Anyway, Gerard, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.